I woke up on the cold concrete floor of my parents' lake house basement, blood dried on the side of my face. My brother Mason's voice still echoed in my ears from moments before. She won't survive the night, and that's better for us. I tried to move, but my head throbbed with each breath. Through blurred vision, I saw my mother's silhouette at the top of the stairs, her hand tightening around the railing. The inheritance needs to stay in the family, she whispered, her voice colder than the concrete beneath me. The real family. She reached for the light switch, and I watched her face in that final second before darkness. There was no hesitation, no regret. Just calculation. The basement went black, and I heard the door lock click into place. Their footsteps faded. Car doors slammed. An engine started. In that moment, I understood with brutal clarity, my own family had chosen money over my life. The world I thought I belonged to had vanished in a single breath. My name is Chloe Banks, and the people who made me had just decided I didn't deserve to exist. I don't know how long I lay there in the darkness, drifting in and out of consciousness. Every time I woke, the reality crashed over me again. My family had left me here to die. Not strangers. Not enemies. The people who raised me. Eventually, survival instinct kicked in. I dragged my shaking body across the basement floor, feeling along the walls until I found the stairs. Each step was agony. My vision swam, and twice I nearly fell backward. At the top, I tried the door. Locked, as I knew it would be. But the lake house was old, and my father had never fixed the broken window latch in the basement storage room. I stumbled through the darkness until I found it, pushed it open, and squeezed through. Glass cut my hands. I didn't care. The night air hit my face, sharp and cold. I was barefoot, wearing only the dress I'd put on for what I thought was a family dinner. That dinner felt like it happened in another lifetime. I started walking, not knowing where I was going, knowing only that I had to get away. The lake house was 15 miles from town, surrounded by empty roads and dense woods. I made it maybe half a mile before my legs gave out. The highway lights blurred together, spinning in circles above me. I collapsed into the drainage ditch beside the road, my cheek pressing against gravel and dead leaves. I heard a truck engine in the distance, growing louder. Brakes squealed. A door opened. Hey! Hey, can you hear me? A man's voice, panicked but gentle. Strong hands turned me over carefully. Oh God, what happened to you? Jonah, get her in the truck now. A woman's voice, sharper with urgency. I tried to speak, to explain, but darkness pulled at the edges of my vision. The last thing I remembered was being lifted, feeling a warm blanket wrap around my shoulders, and a woman's hand gently brushing hair from my forehead. Then everything went black again, but this time, it felt different. This time, I wasn't alone. I woke up in a small living room with mismatched furniture and the smell of coffee. Warm blankets covered me. For a moment, panic flooded through me, until I saw the girl with freckles sitting in a chair nearby, reading a book. She noticed I was awake and smiled. Hey, you're back with us. I'm Lily. She called over her shoulder. Aunt Rose, she's awake. An older woman appeared, maybe 70, with kind eyes and hands that had clearly worked hard their whole lives. She brought me tea in a chipped mug without asking if I wanted any. You gave us quite a scare, honey, Aunt Rose said, settling into the chair beside me. My nephew Jonah found you on Route 17. What's your name? Chloe, I whispered, my throat raw. They didn't ask who hurt me. They didn't demand explanations or threaten to call the police. They just sat with me, offering tea and quiet comfort. Something my own blood hadn't done in years. On the third day, Lily finally asked the question I'd been dreading. Who did this to you, Chloe? I'd had time to prepare an answer, to construct the lie I needed to survive. A boyfriend, I said, staring at my tea. Ex-boyfriend. Things got bad. It was easier than the truth. Easier than admitting my family had tried to erase me from existence for money. But Lily tilted her head, studying my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Whoever did this didn't just want to hurt you," she said quietly. "They wanted you gone. Completely gone." I looked up, startled by her perception. "I work at a women's shelter downtown," she explained. "I've seen a lot." "And this?" She gestured at my healing wounds. "This was attempted murder." I couldn't respond. The truth stuck in my throat like broken glass. Aunt Rose reached over and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to talk about it until you're ready," she said. "You're safe here." While I healed in their spare bedroom, I used Lily's old laptop to check the news. My hands shook as I typed my family's name into the search bar. There it was, Banks family inheritance hearing concludes. The article was dated 3 days ago, the same night I'd been attacked. My grandfather had died 6 months earlier, leaving behind a considerable fortune split between his children and grandchildren. But the article mentioned only 3 heirs present at the hearing: my mother Diane, my father Marcus, and my brother Mason. My name appeared once, in a single devastating sentence: Chloe Banks, 24, was reportedly unable to attend due to personal instability and has not been in contact with family members for several weeks. They were covering their tracks, painting me as unstable, unreliable, gone. They genuinely believed I had died in that basement or would die somewhere on those empty roads. And they were moving forward as if I'd never existed. I closed the laptop before I started crying. Jonah found me reading job listings 2 weeks later, my fingers still trembling as I scrolled. He was tall, maybe 30, with mechanic's hands and the kind of steady presence that made you feel safe. "You don't look like you belong behind a convenience store counter," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "You look like you're meant to run things." I laughed, then immediately started crying. I couldn't help it. No one had ever believed in me like that. My family had spent 24 years telling me I was too soft, too emotional, too weak to handle real responsibility. Jonah sat down beside me, not touching, just present. "I'm serious," he said. "Whatever you came from, whoever hurt you, they were wrong about you. I can tell." "How?" I whispered. "Because you survived," he replied simply. "And you're already trying to rebuild. That takes strength most people don't have." Those words planted something inside me, a tiny seed of possibility in scorched earth. I took the smallest job I could find at a health food shop downtown called Green Roots. The owner, an older woman named Patricia, needed someone to sweep floors, stock shelves, and handle basic inventory. The pay was barely minimum wage, but I didn't care. I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. I arrived early and stayed late. I learned everything about supplements, nutrition, wellness products, and alternative health. Patricia noticed my interest and started teaching me about the business side: ordering, pricing, customer relationships, marketing. Something inside me clicked into place. The wellness industry was booming, full of promises and products, but I noticed something Patricia mentioned constantly: so many companies lied. They exaggerated benefits, hid ingredients, charged excessive prices for cheap products. "People are desperate for health," Patricia said one afternoon. "And desperate people are easy to exploit." That night, lying in the spare bedroom of people who'd saved my life, I thought about my family. About how they'd exploited my desperation to belong, my desire for their approval. About how they'd weaponized love itself. Maybe I could build something different. 3 months after the attack, a friend from college sent me a news clip with a concerned message: "Chloe, is this true?" The video showed my mother on the local news, tears streaming down her face. "We haven't seen Chloe in months," she sobbed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "We fear she's mentally unwell. If anyone has seen our daughter, please contact us. We just want to know she's safe." I watched the performance with cold detachment. She wasn't crying for me. She wasn't worried about my safety. This was legal groundwork. In most states, if someone goes missing for a specific period and family members can prove they made attempts to locate them, they can petition to have that person declared legally dead. It's usually 7 years, but with evidence of mental instability, the timeline can be shortened. My mother wasn't mourning. She was building a case. If I stayed missing long enough, they could seize everything that was supposed to be mine. They could erase me completely, legally, and financially. I saved the video. Documentation would matter eventually. Working late one night at Green Roots, I found myself reorganizing the supplement section and growing increasingly frustrated. So many products made impossible claims. Lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Reverse aging naturally. Cure chronic pain forever. I pulled out my notebook, the same one where I'd been tracking business concepts for weeks, and started writing frantically. What if there was a wellness company built on radical transparency? What if every product listed exactly what it contained, exactly what it could realistically do, and exactly where it came from? What if you built a company on trust instead of exploitation? On honesty instead of manipulation? Everything my family wasn't. The idea consumed me. I sketched business models, researched suppliers, studied successful wellness brands, and analyzed why customers loved or hated them. Patricia caught me one evening, surrounded by papers, laptop open to 3 different supplier websites. "You're building something, aren't you?" she asked, smiling. "Maybe," I admitted. "Probably crazy." "The best things usually are," she replied. I couldn't afford much, but I had saved $3,000 from my job at Green Roots. It wasn't nearly enough to launch a company. I needed licenses, suppliers, product development, packaging, a website, marketing. I was sitting at Aunt Rosa's kitchen table, calculator in hand, trying to make impossible numbers work when Jonah came home from the auto shop. He saw my frustrated expression and the scattered papers. "What's wrong?" he asked. I explained my idea, a wellness company built on transparency and community. Products that actually worked, priced fairly, marketed honestly. He listened carefully, then disappeared into his room. When he returned, he handed me an envelope with $300 inside. "That's my savings," he said. "Invest it." Before I could protest, Lily appeared with $200, and Aunt Rose pressed an envelope into my hands containing $500. "Build something beautiful with this, sweetheart," she whispered. I cried harder than I'd cried when my family left me to die. Because this was real love. Not blood. Not obligation. Just 3 people who believed in someone they'd found on a roadside. We launched Thrive Collective in Lily's living room with $4,000 and massive amounts of hope. I sourced simple, effective supplements from transparent suppliers. We packaged everything by hand, using recycled materials, with ingredient lists that explained exactly what each component did. Lily helped me film short videos where I talked directly to the camera about honesty in the wellness industry. I didn't hide behind corporate polish. I just spoke truth. This vitamin C supplement won't cure your cold, but it might help your immune system work better. Here's what's in it, here's where it comes from, here's what it actually costs to make. The videos went viral. Not because they were slick or professional, but because people were desperate for honesty. Within 2 weeks, we'd sold out our first inventory run. Within a month, we had a waiting list. Within 3 months, small investors started reaching out. My family had taught me everything not to be, and it turned out that was the perfect education for building something real. 6 months into Thrive Collective's success, my surname started trending on social media. Someone had connected my name to the Banks family, and suddenly my mother was on television again. "Our daughter Chloe has been gone for almost a year," she said, looking directly into the camera with practiced sorrow. "We've learned she may be operating some kind of business venture. We're concerned because Chloe has struggled with delusions and mental health issues. She's not stable enough to run a company." Mason appeared beside her, wearing his concerned brother expression. "We just want to help her," he said earnestly. "Before she hurts herself or others with false medical claims." They didn't know I was watching. They had no idea I'd built something real, something successful, something that had nothing to do with their money or their name. They assumed I'd either died or was barely surviving, certainly not thriving. I screenshot everything. Every interview, every claim, every lie. Documentation mattered. 2 weeks after my family's television appearance, a lawyer named Harrison Beck contacted me through Thrive Collective's business email. He asked to meet in person, claiming he had information I needed to see. I brought Jonah to the meeting, not entirely trusting strangers with official-sounding titles. Beck was in his 60s, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen enough courtroom drama to write novels. He slid a folder across the table. "I was your grandfather's personal attorney for 30 years, he said. "And I need you to know what your family is doing." Inside were documents they'd filed in probate court. A petition to declare me mentally unfit. Paperwork removing me from inheritance claims. Transfer documents putting my portion of the estate into Mason's name. Half the documents bore my signature. Signatures I'd never written. "They forged these?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Yes," Beck confirmed. "And I'm willing to testify to that." In 2 years, Thrive Collective reached $1 billion in valuation. We'd expanded from supplements to sustainable wellness products, built a community of 3 million members, and revolutionized transparency in the industry. When the news broke, Jonah, Lily, and Aunt Rose threw a celebration in their tiny living room, the same room where I'd first woken up after they saved me. We ate cheap pizza and drank champagne from mismatched glasses, and they cheered louder than I did. For the first time in my life, success felt safe. It felt earned, not inherited. Built, not given. Mine, not stolen. My mother called the next day. I didn't recognize the number, so I answered. "Chloe," she breathed. "I saw the news. $1 billion. We're so proud of you." "We." Proud. As if they'd had anything to do with it. "I have to go," I said and hung up. My hands shook for an hour afterward, but I didn't call back. The emails started arriving daily. My mother, my father, Mason, distant cousins I'd barely met. All variations on the same theme: "We want you home. We forgive you for leaving. Family should be together. We can help you manage your success." The entitlement was breathtaking. They'd left me bleeding in a basement, spread lies about my mental health, forged legal documents, and now they wanted reconciliation on their terms. They wanted back into my life now that I was worth something. I forwarded every email to Harrison Beck. He added them to the growing file of evidence. Their willingness to communicate now, after years of silence, proved they'd known where I was all along. They'd simply waited until my success was too significant to ignore. "Keep every message," Beck advised. "Let them keep digging." So I did. I read each email with cold detachment, filed it away, and went back to building my empire with people who'd saved me when I was worth nothing. Thrive Collective held its annual charity gala at a downtown hotel, raising money for women's shelters and homelessness prevention. I wore a simple black dress, standing near the back as Lily gave a speech about the importance of community support systems. Someone grabbed my arm. I turned to find my mother, perfectly coiffed, wearing a designer gown I recognized from her favorite boutique. She'd gotten past security somehow. "You owe us," she hissed quietly, her smile still in place for anyone watching. "Your success came from our name, our connections, our upbringing." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "No," I said, my voice calm. "It came from escaping all of that." Security appeared before she could respond. I'd given them photos of my family weeks ago, just in case. She was escorted out while still insisting she was my mother and had every right to be there. The performance was wasted. I felt nothing. 3 months later, my family filed a lawsuit claiming I'd stolen family business concepts, used the bank's family name to build my company, and owed them substantial damages for brand appropriation. The case was laughed out of court in less than 30 minutes. The judge reviewed Thrive Collective's complete filing history, including our incorporation documents that predated any supposed family business discussions. He noted that I'd built the company under my own name, using my own capital, with zero family involvement. This is a frivolous lawsuit designed to harass a successful business owner, the judge stated. Case dismissed with prejudice. But it confirmed something I'd known all along: my family would never stop trying to own me. They'd never accept that I'd built something without them, something they couldn't control or claim or corrupt. I met with Harrison Beck and my corporate attorneys that afternoon. If something happens to me, I asked, who inherits my controlling shares? The question hung in the air. Then I said the names of the only people who'd ever saved me: Jonah, Lily, and Rose. My family's own greed finally caught up with them. I'd been quietly tracking their finances through public records and strategic contacts, documenting their spiral. The investments my father made with his portion of the inheritance failed spectacularly. Mason had taken out massive loans against his expected future earnings, then invested in cryptocurrency at precisely the wrong time. My mother's attempts to start a luxury consulting business hemorrhaged money month after month. Within 3 years of receiving their inheritance, the Banks family was broke. The mansion went into foreclosure. Cars were repossessed. Credit cards maxed out. They'd burned through millions with the same carelessness they'd planned my death. Suddenly, my phone number appeared in their contacts again. The messages changed tone: Chloe, we're family. We need help. Your brother is in real trouble. Your father's health is suffering from the stress. I didn't respond. But I saved everything, watching their desperation mount like a tsunami gathering force offshore. They cornered me in a parking garage after a board meeting. I'd known it would happen eventually. Mason grabbed my shoulders, his face desperate. We're family, Chloe. You have to help us. I looked at him calmly. At my mother standing behind him, her designer clothes now 2 seasons old. At my father, who couldn't meet my eyes. Family doesn't leave you bleeding in a basement, I said quietly. My mother's face twisted. We made a mistake. People make mistakes. You can't hold it against us forever. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, I replied. What you did was attempted murder. You don't recover from that with an apology. Security arrived, alerted by my assistant who'd been monitoring the situation. My family was escorted out while Mason shouted about how I'd changed, how money had corrupted me. I drove home to Aunt Rose's house, where I still kept a room, and she made me tea while I shook. You did the right thing, she whispered. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. When Thrive Collective hit $5 billion in valuation, the news coverage was inescapable. Every business magazine, every financial news program, every entrepreneurship podcast wanted to interview me. Forbes put me on the cover with the headline, From Nothing to $5 Billion, The Chloe Banks Story. I declined most interviews, but I accepted one podcast appearance with specific conditions. I'd tell my story fully, holding nothing back. The episode went viral, racked up 20 million downloads in the first week. I told them everything. The basement, the inheritance, the forged documents, the systematic erasure attempt. I named no names, but anyone who cared to connect dots could figure it out. The public response was overwhelming. Support flooded in from abuse survivors, people who'd escaped toxic families, anyone who'd ever been underestimated. But more importantly, my family couldn't hide anymore. They couldn't control the narrative or pretend they were the victims. The truth was out there, documented and undeniable. The day came exactly as I'd planned it. My family arrived at Thrive Collective's headquarters, dressed in their best remaining clothes, wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They'd called ahead, requesting a family meeting to discuss reconciliation and future business collaboration. They thought I was going to restore them. That money had healed the wounds, or that blood would ultimately triumph over everything they'd done. They expected a reunion, an inheritance, a return to the natural order where the Banks family owned everything they touched. I met them in the main boardroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. Jonah, Lily, and Aunt Rose sat at the table beside me. My family's eyes flickered over them with barely concealed contempt. "You brought strangers to a family meeting?" my mother asked, her voice tight. "I brought my family," I corrected calmly. "You're the strangers here." Their smiles faltered. They sensed something wrong but couldn't identify what. "Not yet." I stood up, activating the presentation screen behind me. "I wanted you here," I began, "because you deserve to see this in person." The screen displayed Thrive Collective's corporate structure, updated that morning. Every share, every property, every asset clearly marked. Effective today, I've transferred 100% of equity in Thrive Collective to 3 people. I gestured to Jonah, Lily, and Rose. The people who found me bleeding on a roadside and decided I deserved to live. Gasps filled the room. My mother stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "You gave strangers our legacy?" "Your legacy?" I smiled. "You mean the $5 billion empire I built after you left me for dead? That legacy?" Mason's face went white. "Chloe, you can't do this. We're blood." "Blood means nothing," I replied. "You taught me that in the basement. Love means everything. They taught me that in their living room." My father finally spoke, his voice shaking. "We made mistakes, but we're still your parents." "No," I said firmly. "You're the people who gave birth to me. These 3 are my parents now. They're my family. And they're the sole inheritors of everything I've built." Security appeared at the door as my family began shouting, their careful masks completely shattered. My mother screamed about lawsuits, about unfairness, about betrayal. The irony seemed lost on her. Mason lunged toward me, and Jonah stood up, placing himself between us. "You need to leave," he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "This isn't over," my mother hissed as security guided her toward the exit. "We'll fight this. We'll prove you're mentally unfit, just like we said." "You're welcome to try," I replied. "I have 3 years of documented evidence of your fraud, your forgery, and your attempted murder. Harrison Beck has already filed everything with the appropriate authorities. So please, go ahead. Fight it." The realization hit them all at once. I hadn't just won. I'd been documenting every step, building an unassailable case while they'd been busy destroying themselves with greed. They were escorted out still screaming, still making threats, still refusing to accept that they'd caused their own destruction. Through the window, I watched them reach their car, an old sedan that used to be their backup vehicle. Everything else had been repossessed. That evening, we celebrated in Aunt Rose's living room, the same room where I'd woken up 3 years earlier, broken and terrified. Jonah ordered pizza. Lily brought cheap wine. We sat on the same mismatched furniture, now as co-owners of a $5 billion empire. "It feels wrong," Lily said quietly. "We didn't do anything to deserve this." "You saved my life," I replied. "You gave me shelter when my own family wanted me dead. You believed in me when no one else did. You loved me when I was worth nothing. That deserves everything." Aunt Rose squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "You didn't have to do this, sweetheart." "Yes, I did," I said. "Because you showed me what family actually means. Not blood. Not obligation. Not ownership. Just love." My old family lost their money, their reputation, and their last chance with me. Legal consequences were coming for the fraud and forgery. Their names would forever be attached to the story of greed destroying everything it touched. My new family inherited an empire built on honesty, transparency, and community. And I finally inherited something I'd never had before: peace.